Mr. Macpherson, I want to go back first of all to the football ban and ask you to look with me at one document. It's TREL 5036_053. You not got that? TREL 5036_053. No. Well, I'll come. No. I'll come back to that in that case. I'd asked you some questions about what Dr. Arenston told you about boys being infected with HTLV3, HIV. Can I just go back to that? As far as you can remember, were you told about the infection of boys with HTLV3 in one go by Dr. Arenston? In other words, did he come to you and say, we've tested the boys, we've discovered X number are infected? Or were you told, as it were, at different times about different boys?
Well, it would. Well, first of all, you've hinted or that he didn't tell me straight away. I find that very surprising. I find that hard to believe, and I would be interested to see some evidence of that. But to answer your question, I mean, he obviously he would just tell me about who he knew about at any time. So
your recollection is you learnt about it possibly over a number of meetings?
Oh, we yeah, I mean, we're dozens of meetings, yes. I'm frozen actually in here. It's very cold. I'm losing my voice.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether there's anything we can do.
Well, let's if you like, we can take a break and see if we can get the temperature up.
No, carry on. But I'm just saying, it's awfully cold.
I'm very sorry about that. You don't have you wouldn't, in the weather as it is, you wouldn't have a coat with you at all, would you?
Yeah, anyway, carry on.
Okay. Well, if you get too uncomfortable such that you need a further break, let us know, Mr. Macpherson.
It shouldn't be an endurance test.
Thank you.
That's the principle.
Yes, thank you.
I'd want you to be as comfortable as we can make you.
Thank you.
When you were told by Dr. Arenston about boys being infected with HIV, did you take any steps to satisfy yourself that the boys were being told and that their parents were being told?
Well, I can't remember exactly what happened, but I mean, I would imagine I would guess that if he told me, he'd already told the boys, or was about to tell them, and that he'd already told or was about to tell the parents. That would be my expectation.
And is it right to understand that, as far as you can recall, you yourself didn't take steps to check that he'd done that because your expectation was...
It wasn't my job, was it?
Did you ask Dr. Arenston, as far as you can recall, how this had happened? How it had happened that some of your boys...
Well, he explained to me how it had happened. You mean the infected blood?
Yes.
Yes.
And did you challenge him? Did you say, was this avoidable, Tony, or anything like that?
No. I don't think so. Why would I?
So there is a heater that we've got that could be plugged in next to Mr. Macpherson.
Let's do that and see if that helps.
Okay.
Miss Fraser-Butlin's going to give up her heater for the witness.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you.
I don't know whether there's not one in... There should be...
Go on.
If you need to.
Mr. Macpherson, you've said in your statement, I'll just show it, WITN 5561001. And if we can go to page 12.
Well, just 1 moment, because there may be a distraction for.
I'll wait.
It's all right. It's okay. Carry on.
Right.
So we
Yeah,
go
go
to
on.
page 12, please show me.
Yeah, right.
Last page.
Thank you very much.
In paragraph 67, you say we were all extremely upset when we were told that some of our pupils had been infected due to blood contamination. And then you say this, I'm confident that nobody in our school had any idea that it was unsafe to use for transfusions. What's the factual basis for your confidence that nobody knew
Okay, none.
that? None.
No, not really. I mean, I didn't know anything about it really. I just had confidence in the staff, which, if you're telling me that my confidence was misplaced, then I'm very sorry and I'm very sad. But at the time, I had utter confidence in that the staff were being honest and doing their best here.
Can I then just look with you at a handful of documents which show some of the governors' meetings in 1985, 1986? We've got a number. I'm not going to go to all of them, but I just wanted to ask for your clarification on a couple of matters. So if we go first of all to TREL 40363, please, Shomik. We have that? Don't have that.
I can probably remember if you tell me what it's about.
It's probably easier to show you the document and easier for others to follow as well, but thank you.
I think the thing is this, that there are people who are watching online. It's not just the people here who you're talking to.
Right.
And they need to be able to see what the document is. But I suspect you've probably had a few lessons in your time which didn't entirely go as planned.
Of course.
I think we have to treat this as one of those
Yeah.
sorts of
Right.
lessons.
Right.
If we need a break to get it sorted out in case this happens with other documents,
Yes,
we'll take a 10-minute break. Maybe a chance to walk around and warm up as well.
So I think we've got them now. The difficulty is that the documents get sent in different files and folders, and obviously there's been a lot going on this week. Mr. Macpherson, this is an extract from minutes of a meeting of the governing body, 21st of October 1985. And if we go to the bottom of the second page, we can see the heading at the bottom, Medical Matters, and there's reference to a report from Dr. Tomlinson about AIDS. And then if we can go to the next page, top half of the page. So I'll just read it out for the benefit of those who are following and then ask you. Dr. Whitfield highlighted the main effects of the present situation with regard to AIDS and emphasised that although the large majority of haemophiliacs are carrying the antibody, indications are that very few of them will develop AIDS. Heat treatment of donated blood and blood products derived from it meant that there would in future be virtually no risk of infection from blood transfusion or factor VIII. In the very long term, the possibility existed that a vaccine might be found to prevent or even cure the disease. And then he goes on to say this, until such time as this vaccine was available, the risk is twofold. One, through accidental contact with infected blood, In this respect, the college's present strict precautions are as good as possible and have been extremely effective in the past with regard to hepatitis. Now, just pausing there, Mr. Macpherson, do you recall what the strict precautions were to prevent accidental contact with infected blood?
Well, I mean, there wouldn't be normally infected blood in the school. You mean if someone had an actual bleed, an external bleed? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, I'm simply trying to understand what's being discussed here.
Yeah.
And it refers to there being strict precautions to prevent accidental contact with infected blood, presumably from child to child through accidental contact. Do you know what those precautions were?
No, I can't remember I don't remember about this really. I mean, I think I would guess we're talking here about making sure that the pupils realise they had to wash their hands and wash any blood and that sort of thing. I don't know.
And then the next is to identify a risk of through intimate sexual contact, and that's said that it could be a particular problem at the college because of the presence of girls who know they have a short expectancy of life and may therefore be prepared to accept the risk. Can you recall what, if any, steps were taken to try and reduce the risk of through sexual contact of the infection being transmitted?
Well, I mean, this is it's a standard problem in any co-ed school, and I had experience of exactly this in my previous job. You know, it's just the normal what you would do normally to, and what you might do with your own daughter if you had a daughter to help her, to prevent her from getting pregnant.
But do you know what was done? What, for example, were all the pupils told of the risk of sexual transmission?
Oh yeah, of course they all knew that. Yes. But I mean, they would. This is something the house staff are obviously going to be involved in talking to boys and girls about anyhow. And when you've got a boy-girl relationship in a boarding school, the staff will obviously talk to the boy and the girl and make sure they know what the risks are, and try and make sure that they're not going to go and have sex. You can't entirely prevent it, but you do your best to prevent it, and you do your best to talk to them about it and make sure they know what's going on. I mean, I would have I've certainly had housemasters come in and say, look what I found in so-and-so's locker, some condoms, and you discuss what you're going to do about it.
And then
this is not really to do with haemophilia, you see it. So, but I mean, it's obviously it becomes a very much more serious situation and more serious matter because of the additional risk.
And then if we just read the next paragraph, it says, in general discussion, it was agreed that there must be no ostracism of haemophiliacs at the college, and that the headmaster's policy of keeping everybody concerned as fully as possible was producing the required results in eliminating unnecessary panic and alarm among staff, pupils and parents. Do you recall whether there were problems with ostracism of haemophiliac children?
When this arose, when we first heard about it, it caused a great deal of concern among staff and other senior pupils who were able to know about it, and parents, and certainly fathers in particular of daughters at the school who had a boyfriend who was a haemophiliac. It caused a lot of concern, and we actually anticipated that there would be girls withdrawn from the school, and I anticipated that maybe some staff would say, I don't want to work here anymore. But I'm glad to say I don't remember any member of staff leaving, and I don't remember any girl actually being withdrawn, because I think we were as open as we could, and we said, this is the situation. If you want to leave, you've got to leave. I don't think anyone did. But yes, it was. Of course, it was. I mean, what do you expect? It was really worrying.
And then if we just look at the next set of, or a next set of minutes, it may not be the next set, for February 1986, it's TREL 40365. So we can see this is an extract from the minutes of a meeting of the governing body 24th of February 1986. And if we go to the second page, there's a discussion about AIDS, but I just want to look at the last paragraph on that page. It says at paragraph D, during further discussion, it was pointed out that the parents of pupils carrying the AIDS antibody are already aware of this fact. Now, do you know what the factual basis was for your belief that all the parents of infected boys were aware?
Well, I'd been told that they'd been informed.
By Dr. Arenstam?
Oh, I can't remember who. It would presumably be him. It would either be him or Pat Tomlinson, but it would be more likely the Haemophilia Centre would do that, wouldn't it? I certainly, that was our understanding.
And then just one further document, it's a couple of years later, or a year later, it's TREL 5092_131, please. This is a letter from you, Mr. Macpherson, 16th of July 1987, to Social Services Department of, looks like the London Borough of Croydon. And I'm not asking you anything about the individual child to which this relates. But we'll see in the second paragraph, you say this: in this college we have a large number of boys suffering from haemophilia, and we work on the assumption that every one of them is a carrier of the AIDS virus. We take all the precautions for every haemophiliac based on this assumption. We do not know which of the haemophiliacs are AIDS virus carriers. Now, that would tend to suggest that you yourself didn't know which children were infected. Do you think that's right?
Well, I think we worked on the assumption that all the haemophiliacs were at risk here, and that it was easier to assume that it was possible that any one of them had the AIDS virus.
Yes, I understand that. It was more about the last sentence, which would suggest that from the school's perspective...
well, I mean...
You didn't know?
As far as I can remember, there were very few who didn't have it. It was quite rare. I only know of one haemophiliac who came to the school who actually never ever suffered in any way, and no one knows why he didn't get affected. That was quite rare. I mean, it just so happens sometimes that some people don't get something, and he was lucky, I suppose. But I don't. I mean, I think at the beginning we probably were told the names of them, but after a little while it was pretty well every haemophiliac was infected, as far as I can remember. There were very, very few who didn't get infected, so you just assumed they all had it. I don't think we went into it didn't really matter to us. We just assumed that they all had it, because I think most of them had.
Do you, we can take that down, thank you. Do you recall any occasions when the media came to the school gates? Because
No, yes, I read that somewhere. I find that hard to believe, because if we'd heard of that, we would have jolly well soon sent them packing. It may have happened once or twice, but I mean, it never came to my attention, certainly not. And I don't know what the basis is for that story.
And then if we go to WITN 5561003, and we go to the second page. This is an extract from the school prospectus that you've exhibited to your statement. I think your statement tells us it's the 1989 prospectus. Yes, 1989 to 1990 prospectus. But I just wanted to look at what it says about healthcare and then just ask you a little about that. So it says the aim of the medical staff at the college is to have an interdisciplinary team of doctors, nurses and therapists all working closely together to assess and treat each child's individual problems so as to achieve as much independence as possible. The medical team works closely with the parents, the teachers and care staff in the houses and with the hospital consultants involved with each child. The team is led by the college medical officer, Dr. Pat Tomlinson, and then there's reference to some of the other staff. And then if we see the next paragraph, it says, when a child is ill, he or she will be admitted to the medical centre and looked after by the nursing staff under the direction of Dr. Tomlinson. The parents will be informed, and if the child needs hospital treatment, this will, if possible, be at their home hospital where the child is already known. And then there's some further discussion then about arrangements during the holidays and so on. Now, that's talking about the general medical centre and the work of Dr. Tomlinson. But would you have had the same expectation of parental involvement for the haemophilia centre?
Yes.
And although this is a 1989 to 90 prospectus, would that have been your expectation really throughout the whole period of time that you were headmaster?
Yes.
Thank you. But is it right to understand that in terms of the haemophilia centre, perhaps because of its slightly unusual status with the doctors being NHS employees, you left it to the haemophilia centre to fulfil that expectation rather than yourself trying to oversee their work?
Well, yes, but in fact, even if they had been employed by us, it would have been the same situation. I mean, as far as Pat Tomlinson was concerned, I would never have dreamt of saying to her or interfering in anything she was doing. Never ever, because I'm not a doctor.
And then I was going to ask you the very first of my questions after the break about the football ban. I'm hoping we might now have the document TREL 5036_053. So this is a letter from Dr. Painter, who you're absolutely right, was there for about a year, to you. This is dated the 17th of May 1978. Again, it's about a particular child who was found playing football, and I'm not asking you about the individual child. But if we could just look at the last paragraph of the letter, it says, I'm afraid that it does make our task even more difficult, and we find that boys are blatantly disregarding medical advice they are given, and in consequence run an increased risk of requiring further transfusions, which of course come at great expense to the National Health Service. There is also a worry that our supplies of Factor VIII may not be quite as easy to obtain as in the past, and it is even more vital that we do not waste material on boys who cannot be bothered to follow the most basic advice. And that might suggest that the question of expenditure and being able to get hold of treatment products did play a part, at least in the doctors' minds, in advocating the football ban. Do you have any recollection of that?
Well, he's saying supplies may not be as easy to obtain as in the past. I mean, that's a question of supply and demand. That's something I don't know anything about. And I mean, I don't see anything wrong with this, to be quite honest. I mean, we should not be wasting money on if we can be sensible and good and husband what we've got. But I mean, all he's saying here is that the boys have got to be sensible, and they've got to actually learn to look after themselves in a way that they don't get bleeds. This is obviously in their best interests. And if he's saying that we shouldn't waste, we should try and not expend money on something that can be avoided, to a certain extent, it's fair enough. I don't think, I think you're probably reading too much into this, actually, to be quite honest. I think he's, who's this Dr. Painter? Yeah, I don't think he was trying to, I think what you're implying is not quite right. I don't think that was what was behind it.
We can take that down, thank you. Did Dr. Arenstam ever attend the meetings of the governing body to provide updates to them about the work of the Haemophilia Centre?
I can't remember.
And do you recall whether the governing body ever sought to exercise any oversight over the work of the Haemophilia Centre?
No, I don't think so. I mean, why would they? I don't think they would have any reason to, actually. I can't think of any reason why they would want to. I mean, the governors are there to govern. They're not there to run the school. That was my job.
Do you recall representatives of pharmaceutical companies ever attending the school site?
No.
And the inquiries had some evidence that pharmaceutical companies would leave branded gifts for the pupils, teddy bears and kites and
Leaving what?
Branded gifts,
Yes.
so gifts bearing the name, for example, of the pharmaceutical company.
What sort of gift?
Kites, teddy bears, and the like. Was that something that you had any knowledge of? So I think your answer to that is no.
Sorry?
You shook your head, and the transcript can't pick up the shake of the head. So is your answer to that no?
Yes, but we had quite a strong parents' committee who met quite regularly, and they raised money for the school, and they organised social things for parents. And one of the things they organised was an annual ball, call it a ball, in the school hall, which had a big attendance. A lot of people came from Alton to it, as well as our own parents, and they had some absolutely incredible prizes there for sort of raffle prizes, and I know they all came from gifts from somewhere. So it is possible that what you're talking about went there, but I don't remember anything else, anything directly to individual pupils or anything.
And then can I then ask you about research that was undertaken in relation to pupils with haemophilia? The inquiry is aware from documents it's seen that there were a number of research projects undertaken involving, for example, Dr. Rainsford and Dr. Arenstam and Dr. Kirk at various points in time. What knowledge did you have of that area of activity?
Oh, not very much. Just chatting to them about it occasionally, about how we're getting on, that sort of thing. But I wouldn't give any details.
So is it right to understand that neither you as headmaster nor the governing body or the school as an institution was asked for its permission or agreement for research to be undertaken?
Well, I mean, we must have given permission, mustn't we? Otherwise they couldn't have done it.
But you've no recollection of any specifics?
No recollection of
any
what?
Specific pieces of research or any discussions about permission?
No, I don't remember. I don't remember anything particularly there. I mean, as far as I can remember, these were thought to be very worthwhile. What they were doing was thought to be very worthwhile, and to be encouraged. That was our feeling.
And do you know what, if any, parental involvement or parental knowledge of the research there was?
I'm pretty sure the parents knew it was going on, but they probably didn't know much about the details.
And when you say you're pretty sure they knew what was going on, is that because your expectation is that the doctors would have told parents? Or did you yourself tell parents about research activity?
I don't think I ever told the parents about it because I didn't know what it was about. I didn't know what they were doing. I really can't. I don't think I can answer that one.
Can I just take you back briefly to the hepatitis B or serum hepatitis outbreak that there was in the mid-1970s, 74, 75? Do you recall being aware at the time that that outbreak was caused by treatment with factor concentrates?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Of course. When there was the hepatitis outbreak in 1974, 75...
Was I aware of what?
Were you aware that the cause of the outbreak was the treatment with the factor concentrates?
Yes.
And were any steps taken by the school to try and mitigate the risk of any future outbreaks?
When you say by the school, do you mean by my part of the school?
Yes.
Well, no, it was not our. It was nothing. I wouldn't have seen that as being something that I had really anything to do with.
So your expectation would be, if there were further steps to be taken, it would be the haemophilia doctors?
That had to be the haemophilia doctors, yes.
And do you know whether...
We didn't have a haemophilia... At that time, we didn't have a haemophilia centre in the school, of course.
And do you know whether there was any report of the outbreak made by the school or the doctors to an external body?
Oh, no idea. Well, are you supposed to report these things?
It's just an open question, Mr. Macpherson. The questions I asked about research were about research in relation to the boys with haemophilia. Was research undertaken, as far as you know, in relation to any of the other pupils at the school, so the non-haemophiliac pupils?
Well, when you say research, it depends what you mean by research. I mean, people sort of investigating numbers of this and numbers of that and parents and so on. I remember a deputy head who investigated or researched into the situation with parents of children at our school, and found that only 40% of the children at the school were from what you would call a normal family, two-parent family home, which is a bit of a surprise. Well, it was a surprise to me that that 60% were from not completely normal, and quite a number had no parents at all, or the parents had rejected them, and she found that that quite a lot were single parent families, and that the child was actually the cause of the breakup of the marriage. And the child usually knew that, which was another psychological factor. But I couldn't tell you how many of these were haemophiliacs.
Do you?
So that sort of research went on. But is that what you're talking about?
Well, do you recall whether there was any medical or clinical research in relation to any of the other cohorts of pupils, the non-haemophiliac pupils?
I know that Pat Tomlinson talked about it a bit, but I don't think she actually did anything particularly. Not at the school. I mean, there were certainly a lot of our pupils went to Great Ormond Street, and I know Great Ormond Street were doing research into a number of things which quite a number of our pupils were absolutely definitely involved in there. There's no question about it. I remember hearing about them. Things like bone marrow transfers that would cure this and cure that, and they never did. And operations that were meant to make pupils walk again. And I remember a boy coming in to me and saying, next time you see me, I'll be walking because I'm going to have this such and such an operation. And he actually was walking at that time on crutches. And you know what? He came back in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. And we used to look at these and we used to say, well, oh dear, is this in the best interest? But these weren't haemophiliacs, so I'm going off the subject now. So yes, there was quite a lot of research going on to do with our pupils. I don't think there was a lot. I mean, there wasn't really very much at our school. There wasn't time. They were busy. They were in lessons. They were being taught. They were. So no, I don't think there was really very much that we were involved in anyway. Does that answer your question? I'm not absolutely sure what your question was.
If I can then just go back to the question of Dr. Rainsford.
Right.
When you joined the school in 1974 and in the following years during the course of the 1970s, what was your understanding of what Dr. Rainsford's role was in connection with the college and the pupils there?
Do you mean detailed? Are you asking for a detailed answer to that question?
I'm asking.
My understanding was that he was doing some research of some, and I thought worthwhile. I was given the impression that it was worthwhile, to do with giving transfusions of factor VIII and prophylactic transfusions and all that sort of thing. But that's about as far as it went with me.
And was it your understanding that, or what was your understanding of his involvement with the actual treatment of the boys? Was that part of his job as far as you understood it, or not?
Oh, I think he was involved with the treatment. Yes. As far as I know, he was. I couldn't guarantee that. I mean, I really had no involvement with the medical side except where I heard about it or talked about it or whatever.
Now, I'd asked you before the break about counselling. Was there anything further about counselling that you can assist us with?
Yeah, well, I think yes, I did want to add a bit about that. You were saying that Mr. Scott was saying that he thought we could have done more, and my answer to that would be you can always do more, you can always improve on things. But we had the housemasters did meet with our psychiatrist. He visited about once a week, and I think most of these times the housemasters did have a meeting with him to discuss whatever they wanted, and I'm sure that this would be one of the topics that they would discuss with him. I occasionally went to these meetings, but very occasionally, because only if there was something particularly coming up that I wanted to hear about. But I can't guarantee it, but I'm pretty sure they discussed with him the counselling of boys with haemophilia. But I would say that all the boys, I think the boys, I'm pretty sure that they all had someone that they could talk to and who was willing to listen to them. And I would just point out that they weren't mentally ill. They didn't need psychiatric help. They weren't, they were perfectly sane. What they had was a rage inside them, a frustration that here they were, that they had suddenly been made ill, and they were probably going to die in the not too distant future. And why me? Why me? And it was, you could see it because they broke out and quite often, and they would be very rude to staff, and they'd go into town and get drunk, and this sort of thing, smoking. The younger ones, I mean, the older ones are allowed to smoke, but the younger ones smoking. They were rebelling. Well, young boys rebel, but this is way over the top rebelling, because they just, why me? They had this rage inside them, and you could see it when you talked to them. You could see it, and this was the result of being given this disease. It had a dreadful effect on them, and if you're trying to say that we should have done more in terms of counselling them, I would say I don't think we could have done any more. I think the staff probably did everything they could and did as much as they could. There was actually nothing you could do about it. They were infected and they were going to die, and that was it. And you just had to help them get on with life and live life to the full, and make the best of life that they could. And what we did was we tried to stop them thinking about their lives, this horrible thing that was happening to them, as much as we could. We tried to, and our way of doing it was to try and keep them busy. So after school, the staff ran all sorts of clubs and took outings and organised table tennis and billiards, and swimming was a great one. The doctors did approve of swimming, so I think everyone on the staff, and including me, were on a rota to supervise free swims when they were free and at weekends, and so they were able to go and have we had very good swimming pools at both schools, and it was a question of trying to keep them busy and keep them from thinking about the horrible future that they had. That was and I think that the staff did their best in that respect. I don't know. You can do more. You can ask some of these people over there whether they feel we could have done more for them, but we didn't think we could. I don't know. I think the staff did everything they could. They weren't mentally ill, They were just in a rage for what had happened to them.
And you were headmaster until 1990 when you retired. So for another 5 years or so after it became known within the school as a whole that the pupils had been infected with HIV. During those years, did the school, the college, try to learn lessons from what had happened to try and prevent anything like that happening again?
Well, are you talking about infecting pupils with in some way?
Well, was there any aspect in which the college looked at what had happened and said we should do things differently or could do things differently from now onwards? In any respect at all? Treatment, support, parental involvement?
Well, I'm sure we learned a lot about how to help pupils who were who were ill in a way that they were going to die. Because, I mean, we had lots of other pupils in the school who were going to die. We had about 20 odd boys again suffering from Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and they actually died a lot earlier than the haemophiliacs. Most of them died before they left us, whereas most of the haemophiliacs had left the school before they died. So I mean, these were things that were happening in the school anyway. I'm sure that a lot of things were learned, but you know, I'm not sure what you're getting at here.
It was an open question, Mr. Macpherson. I'm not getting at anything or suggesting things.
I think when you spend your life as a schoolmaster and as a headmaster and as a housemaster or whatever it is you're doing, looking at what's going on and seeing if you can improve on it next time. And yes, I'm sure we did try to learn from everything we did, not just to do with the haemophiliacs, and make a better job of the way we ran the place. I mean, you're always trying to improve, aren't you? Well, I think we were, but you know, I'm not sure what you're getting at. Actually,
I'm really not getting at anything, Mr. Macpherson. I'm just asking questions. With the benefit of hindsight, do you think that the school, the college, should have had greater oversight over the activities of the haemophilia centre?
Well, I don't. You're. I think we've probably got to wait to hear the result of this inquiry before I can answer that, because, I mean, to my knowledge, I mean, as I always thought that they were doing the best they could, and that they were honest, and if they didn't immediately take action when they knew that infected blood was being used, I'm very surprised, and I think that was remiss, and that was a mistake, which I would say was culpable, and I think that's what you've been implying to a certain extent here. Okay,
Really
maybe you haven't.
Mr.
Maybe you haven't. Maybe I've got that. Maybe I picked that incorrectly. But if that was true, then that's disgraceful. But as to, I don't think any of us in the school had really had enough. We didn't know about it, and we didn't have any authority or reason to interfere in any way. No reason whatsoever. I mean, you can't. Doctors are God. Let's face it, aren't they?
Mr. Macpherson, those are the questions I have. Sir Brian, do you have questions?
I do. I have a few. I just want to ask you one question first, if I may, Ms. Richards. What is the earliest reference in the governor's meetings to AIDS?
I'd need to check that, sir, because I've seen the documents that were given to Mr. Macpherson, which I think start in 1985 in terms of references to AIDS, but I've not seen earlier ones, but I haven't myself checked all the earlier governors' meetings. I wouldn't want to give you an assurance without.
Well, I think I'd like, at some stage, I'd like to know, and plainly, if they're held monthly, as you told us, roughly, then...
Sorry, what was your question?
No, I'm not questioning you. I'm asking Ms. Richards.
So
just making sure you're in the loop.
it was one of the things I was going to check before completing the presentation tomorrow.
Very well. No, let me ask you the questions which I have, and be assured, an inquiry is here to ask questions. It will give answers as best it thinks based on the answers to the questions it gives, but it doesn't start with a view that something happened, you prove it didn't, or the other way round. First question I want to ask you really is about your role as a headmaster. You were running the school. Did you actually do any teaching?
When I went there at first, I taught the first year mathematics, and then I did that for a year or two, and then the head of maths wanted me to take over a lower sixth group for when I taught them statistics. So I taught for several years, but then the way things are going in schools, there's more and more bureaucracy and paperwork and problems, and the school was getting bigger as well, and I just didn't have the time after that, and I had to give it up, which was very sad. So I did teach for several years, but I had to give it up because I just didn't have time to do it.
Well, I thought that might be the case. The school itself, at any one time, roughly how many pupils did you have, boys and girls?
Well, we ended up with about 200 and something or other. I can't remember the exact number.
So as schools went, it was relatively small.
Yes, relatively small if you compare it to a secondary modern school or something like that. But I think all the other, if you look around the country, all the other boarding schools for physically handicapped or disabled children are around the 30s or 40s. That's about the average. So we are vastly bigger, and the same abroad. I suspect there are very few schools in the whole world, boarding schools for handicapped children, anything remotely as big as that.
And does it make it more difficult having 200 rather than 30 to get to know each child as an individual?
Well, no, because 200 isn't actually a big number of pupils to get to know. I mean, it was, in terms of previous schools I've been in, it was quite a small school. Don't forget, when you say school, we had training courses when I went there at first, and they were for pupils, older pupils, training them to, for example, in tailoring, and this suit I'm wearing now was made by pupils in the tailoring course. Two of them were actually haemophiliacs, who are sadly now no longer with us. And that tie here was made by a boy with thalidomide, whose mother had taken thalidomide, and he'd absolutely no arms at all. And he made this using his toes, with his feet. That's the sort of thing that they did. So we had a lot of these courses for older pupils. So a lot of the pupils were aged well over 18. I mean, I think we had a 23-year-old at one stage on these courses, and that continued. It became more sort of FE, if you like, and then we managed to develop we had very good relations with the sixth form college, and we managed to develop a special arrangement with them whereby our sixth form went, instead of us teaching them in the school, because with the small number, I mean 200 people, you can't really run a decent sixth form with that very efficiently. And so we arranged with the local sixth form college that our sixth form would go there, which was much better for them, and it was great for everyone. And it was just a private arrangement that we sent them, and we sent whatever care staff were required to help them. And in return for our pupils going there, we provided one or two teachers who went to the sixth form college and taught in the sixth form college. So there was no money involved.
The question was really about how well you think that you knew each of the children.
How well did I know?
Each of the children, as an individual.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Well. Some I suppose I got to know better than others. There were some who kept being sent to me, and there were others I would just happen to meet and chat to.
So you knew the misbehaviours?
Absolutely.
And the parents would come now and again, perhaps?
Yes, there were quite a lot of parents I would know quite well, but others I didn't know at all. I mean, I met them all when they came for interview initially.
Well, of course, but you would
after
actually...
that, I would not necessarily see them.
Because over time, presumably, they'd come in the cars or for some form of transport to the school to drop their child off for the start of term and pick up at the end of term, and you might see them those times, if not at other times.
Yes, but they wouldn't come and see me really unless they had a reason to see me. They did that with the housemaster or the housemistress, and in fact they used to go home at weekends. Those who could went home at weekends, and Sunday evening was a coffee evening in all the houses where the parents would sit and have coffee with the staff and so on.
So you knew a number of the children individually, some better than others. You knew a number of the parents quite well. You were in loco parentis. It's a phrase you use in your statement, and it's a rather slippery expression, isn't it, in terms of education, the idea that a teacher is the parent to the child for the time being. How did you see it as reflecting on your duties to the children?
I'm not sure what you're getting at.
Well, I'm just asking what it involved for you. For instance, you had to sign on some occasions consent for various activities on behalf of the child, as though you were the parent, did you?
Yes.
And consent for various medical procedures. That might come to you, might it?
Yes.
And when a child was going to be told something which could be of life-shattering importance, give them that rage burning inside them, you might perhaps be asked to come with them to the meeting if the parent wasn't available. Might you?
I might have been.
Were you ever?
I didn't go to these meetings, no. I wasn't invited to the hemophilia centres to hear to these meetings, no.
Did, as far as you know, was any other member of staff invited as if a parent, because they too would have a degree of in loco parentis obligation?
Yes, it would, yes. As far as I know, the boys were told individually or in a small group about this, and the doctor then informed well, he informed me, but also informed the care staff, and of course the nurses would all be informed.
So the way it went was the doctor saw the pupil, then told the care staff and the nursing
I
staff.
don't know the exact order it would happen in.
But that was roughly your understanding.
Well, it might have been the other way around.
Yes. And so far as you know, was ever any arrangement made for the parent to come to school because there was an important issue to discuss?
Yes.
That did happen or
Oh,
not?
yes.
It did.
Oh, yes.
And so, as far
Quite
as you
often I
know,
would ask a parent to come and talk to me about a particular problem.
if it was a medical problem,
If it was purely a medical problem, they would go to the and see the doctor,
and
or the sister or someone.
who would be involved in that arrangement, as you would understand it? Would
Well,
that
if
be
it was purely medical, it
purely
would be
medical?
it would be Pat Tomlinson who would ask them to come and see her. Or if it was the haemophilia people, it would be be them. Yes.
Thank you.
No, that certainly happened.
The next question, it's going back to the football question. When you first came as head to the school in 1974, do I understand that some of the boys played football?
Yes.
And in 1975 they would as well? Because it's the sort of thing they like to do, you said. So that they were out there playing football. Did anyone say to you at that stage, well, look, this is something that those who have haemophilia really shouldn't be doing because it may disturb their joints?
But that's what actually happened.
No, but
Sorry,
in 1974, 1975 it didn't, as far as we know, because it happened later. With the material we saw in 1978, wasn't it?
Yes, the letter from Dr. Painter's 1978. I don't think we know the exact date the football ban was imposed.
Right, I see. So, at
well,
the
we
time,
do. You've got a thing from me. There was a memo I sent round the staff. You've got that as part of my thing.
I think
I can't remember the date. I think it was earlier than that.
But roughly when was it?
Oh, I can't remember.
So there was a period of time when there wasn't a ban on football, and then you felt, obviously, you would feel that you're going to have to deal with something which is quite restrictive on what the pupils want to do. So, did you ask the medics who were saying, look, we need this ban on football, why now? What's changed?
I'm sorry, I'm not entirely sure what your question is. Are you saying to me, why didn't this happen years ago?
Well, it obviously didn't.
Yes.
And then it did.
Yes.
And the proposal that it should be a ban comes to you from...
Well, I suppose the doctors realised that was when the doctors realised that this was causing a problem and we better do something about it. I think what you're saying is why didn't they say this earlier and why didn't we realise it
I'm not really asking about them. I'm asking a question which is about your reaction.
Yeah.
And what answer you may have had. And it's not difficult to see ahead in your position being asked to restrict pupils doing what they really want to do in their free time, to say, well, why now? What's changed? Why is this ban now needed? That's what I'm asking. Did that cross your mind? Because it's...
Well, yes, I think it did. Yes, I think it did, and I think the answer to that was that the number of bleeds had increased. They were it was getting more serious.
Did you understand?
I don't know why, but it was getting more of a problem.
So it was more of a problem, but you didn't. You asked why, presumably.
I'm pretty sure I did. Yes.
You
yes.
don't recall what answer you got?
Oh, you're talking about 45
I
years
know.
ago.
I'm not blaming you for not knowing. I'm just wondering if you did remember.
I'm pretty sure that we did. I mean, we talked it through. Yes, yes.
So some explanation was given to you about why now and why is it
Yes,
it
I
got
mean, the
worse?
why now was because things were getting worse. We're getting more and more of these knee bleeds, and we've got to do something about it.
Yeah.
When it was known that the many of the pupils were infected with AIDS, you said, well, if you'd known, as soon as you'd have known, you'd have done something about it. And you've told us what the governors, with your help, then decided to do and what you decided to do in running the school.
I'm having great difficulty hearing you.
I'm sorry. I shall speak more slowly.
It's not more slowly, and you need to speak up a little bit.
Right, okay. When...
That's better, thank you.
Thank you, good. When you learned that some pupils had been infected with what might be the virus that caused AIDS, or was the virus that caused AIDS, you said, well, if I'd known, as soon as I'd have known that, I would have done something about it if I'd known earlier. And you've told us what you did do. Did you take any similar action when you knew about a risk of hepatitis?
As far as I can remember, I mean, it's the same situation. I mean, as soon as we knew about it, we did something about it. We did what we could. We let, whatever we could do, we did. I don't think we delayed, if that's what you're saying, for any possible reason. But there was no reason to delay. I mean, why would we? Is that what you're asking?
Well, I'm asking what you did in the light of the knowledge that there was hepatitis, and it may simply have been that you thought there was nothing you could do about it.
Well, I think hepatitis was there before when I arrived. I think that was something that was there, and I was just told about it. That was, but I can't remember now. I'm not sure what your question is.
Well, my question was what my question was. It was, as Council has said, a number of occasions, an open question. There's looking for the answer, and you've given me an answer.
I think in all these cases, we would, as soon as we knew about a problem with hepatitis or AIDS or anything else, we would have done whatever we felt we could do to whatever was appropriate. I don't think we would delay, if that's what you're saying. There was no reason to delay. I can't think of a reason to delay.
I'm not saying you delayed at all. I'm not saying anything. I'm just asking the question.
I mean, there was no reason to delay, was there? Well, I don't think there was.
Now, the last question I want to ask you is this. You've said the governors themselves weren't in a position to exercise any form of oversight over the haemophilia centre, and plainly that's right. It was an NHS operation within the grounds of the school. But one of your trustees was an orthopaedic surgeon, was he?
The chairman of governors was an orthopaedic surgeon, but he was only there for a short. I mean, I think he retired quite soon. he was quite old and he retired. I can't remember when he retired, but as far as I can remember, he was replaced with another head of another chairman, probably within 2 years, but I can't be sure of that, but it'd be about 2 years.
Well, that answers that question. Thank you very much.
So the date of the football memorandum was January 1978.
Yeah.
And Mr. Macpherson's statement sets out the text, and it's right to note it refers to an increase in the number of bleeds suffered by haemophiliacs last term compared to previous terms. So that's what the memorandum said in terms.
Thank you.
Mr. Macpherson, there's just one further question arising out of your response to the chair's questions. When the boys were going to be told of their HIV diagnosis by Dr. Arenstam or the staff at the Haemophilia Centre, do you know if the housemasters or mistresses were told about it and ever invited to participate in those meetings?
Well, I have to say the description I've heard of these meetings came as a shock to me. It's not how I would have handled it if I'd been asked to do it, and I do think that was badly handled.
Because the housemaster or mistress would be perhaps the person in a position to provide pastoral care and support.
Yeah, I think even yes, and I think parents should have been much more involved by the sound of it as well. I mean, I have to say, if what you say is true, I really don't know. I find it hard to believe that's how they did it. It sounds a pretty horrific way to do it. I can't believe that's true, actually, but I mean, these chaps there will be able to tell you whether it's true or not, but that wouldn't have been the way we would have done it if it had been left to the school staff to do it. I'm pretty sure. That was not good.
So those are the questions I have for you. Is there anything you wanted to add, Mr. Macpherson?
I think you've really been over pretty well everything that that we wanted to talk about. I would just say, I know Dr. Arenstam died some time ago, so he's not here to tell us what went on, but I find it very hard to believe that if it's true that he didn't do something straight away when he knew about this infected blood. I find that doesn't seem to go with what I knew of him, and I'm very surprised if that's true. So, but I'm pretty horrified and disgusted as well, because that's certainly not how I would have wanted it dealt with. I mean, but the medical side was really completely separate, and I knew nothing about it. But that does horrify me a bit. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think I really good. I think you've pretty well covered the whole thing. My just one comment, if I may, sir.
Certainly.
Phil Judge, where on earth do you find such an efficient, brilliant, detailed, courteous man? I've never come across anyone as efficient or as well organised as he is. I haven't met him today. I don't know if he's here, but I just compliment you on your staff.
Well, I'm delighted to accept any compliment from my staff. I'm very pleased that that's how you responded to him. I'd like to thank you for more than passing my staff a compliment, though. I'd like to thank you for coming into the Arctic, as you found it, to try to recollect matters which happened, some 30 years after you retired?
45 years.
After you retired?
Oh, after I retired, I beg your pardon.
But to think back to a career which ended so long ago is no mean feat, and to be pressed on matters which weren't so much directed towards your teaching and management of the school in itself, but the interactions between the school and the rather unusual arrangement with the medical centre on site. So can I thank you for that, and for the precision that you've taken with identifying what the question might be, and even for the worry about where it might be leading, which is the answers that we want. You'll have to leave the working out what it all means ultimately to me. But thank you.
You're welcome.
So that concludes the oral evidence for this week, but I will be resuming this afternoon the examination of the documents. And also, in the course of the afternoon, I anticipate we'll be playing a documentary, Blood Brothers, which, again, was addressing issues relating to Treloar's.
Yes, well, we'll do that, shall we, at 2:15.
Thank you, sir.
So 2:15.